Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 97 of SoLeadSaturday. Our today's guest, Kevin Albin, served 25 years with the police in the UK, 8 years of which were with a tactical firearms unit. He then took a career change and returned as a guide working across the globe on mountaineering trips and expeditions for conservation. He has led many trips to the jungles of Borneo, his favorite destination. He writes articles on conservation and on subjects self reflection, and is the author of Stonechild, an eco fiction novel where the famous statues of London come to life with a message on saving the world. As we don't listen, the battle for London begins. He currently lives in France, where he also teaches English. Wow. So, would you like to join me and welcome him on our Solid Saturday, today's episode? And let's just hear more about his career journey. How did he find his area of interest and managing to lead that? Hey, hi, Kevin. Good afternoon
Hi,
to
yeah.
you. And yeah, very happy to have you on the show. Really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show.
I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, it's all my pleasure, and I'm really very excited actually to learn your career journey because you have take such a career shift in your career path. So it would be interesting to explore that more and learn more about your side as well.
Okay.
So, to begin with, our very first segment is about passion or the interest, where we are giving the audience an idea how one can find their area of interest or the passion while they are studying or pursuing their education. So, you are a guide writer, and in past you have served for police like almost 25 years. So, how did you find your areas of interest in different areas, and what motivates you to be where you are today?
Okay. I joined the police force at the tender age of 18 years of age, and so I was very young, and I loved it. It was an absolute passion of mine to be a police officer, and in fact, the jobs I do or have done have a connection because they're about looking after people. As a police officer, you're there to look after people. You're there to respond. It could be that they're a witness or a victim, or even as someone that has committed a crime. All of those people need help from the police officers, and it's true. Criminals need help as well. We don't want criminals to be criminals, but often they commit crime for a reason. Maybe they don't have enough money, or that's the way they are. So they need help as well. Being
Mhm.
a guide is very similar because I look after people, sometimes in hostile environments,
Mhm.
uh, but often people come on my trips. It can be about conservation, or it can be just to climb to the top of Kilimanjaro, for example. But often people come because they're at that point in their life when they want some change, or they've been ill, or they've known someone that's ill, or they've been through a divorce or some difficulty in their life, and that I often find myself facilitating the group to say, where are you in life and where are you going? And it's not just about climbing Kilimanjaro or spending time in the jungle. It's often about human beings being together, and it's looking after them again. So that's my passion, really, is looking after people. I'm very passionate about people, and it's
Wow.
very nice to have those sorts of environments to work in.
Mhm. Wow. So you took a serving approach actually. So you were interested into the people. So you tried to serve to the people. So that's why police. So I can completely get it actually. So thank you so much for sharing. And moving towards our next segment is more about questions from the audience. We have shortlisted a couple of questions for you. So the first question is around your, one side of you, which is you worked and served for police for 25 years. So when you were police, can you describe a very distressing situation in which you remained calm and collected?
Ooh, as your viewers can probably appreciate, being a police officer is quite a different type of job. There's a lot of stress on most days. Most days you end up dealing with some sort of incident. And I had the privilege of working on a tactical firearms team. So that means I carried a gun, which is not usual in the UK. They're not routinely armed.
Mm.
I also worked as a hostage negotiator, so that was something completely different as well. So policing in itself is quite often a stressful job, and I can think of one incident perhaps that may describe the many facets of being a police officer. It was while working as a negotiator. There was a man who was very stressed with life. He had opened all the gas appliances in his ground floor apartment. He was in a block of apartments, and he was there at the front door with a lighter, threatening to ignite the gas and therefore blow up the whole of the building. As a negotiator, you try to connect with the person, you try to talk to them, you try to understand them, you try to give them empathy, but the end result is to persuade them to stop doing what they're threatening to do. And I spoke to him for probably close on 4 hours, and finally persuaded him to come out. Now that was very stressful. I had been trained to do that, but it was a stressful circumstance, but also needed a great deal of patience. We couldn't go in, for example, because he just had to flick the lighter and that would have it. And the fire and rescue service had already shown us that there was a high risk of an incident, of something blowing up. So I was very pleased when finally he said, yes, okay, I'll come out. So,
Wow.
sorry. Yeah.
Wow. This is for to listen, it sounds like very interesting, but when you are actually facing it as a police, I think you require a lot of bravery, courage, and as you mentioned, you have to be patient with the other person because
I think some of that, I mean, a lot of that comes from training. You do a lot of training. The negotiator training was very intense, for example, but you're training all the time. And the other thing is you have the support of a team behind you. You have the support of all your colleagues, and that is excellent. That's
Wow.
very strong.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And second side of you is you are a mountain guide actually. So you took a career shift and after 25 years. So we have a question which is about mountain guiding. So as a mountain guide, share an example of a time you had to gather information from multiple sources. How did you determine which information was relevant?
Okay, I can think of perhaps an incident once when working in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a long trek called the Lares Trek, which goes up to around 5,000 meters.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big group on this occasion because two groups had been put together after the volcano in Iceland had stopped all the travel, if you remember that. And so we ended up having two groups together. So I had a lot of people and they became spread out over the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
which is not ideal. I'd sooner keep all my clients together, but that's what had happened. And I got a call on the radio to say that there were two people in different areas who were suffering with altitude sickness.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there was a storm coming, a lightning storm. And my method of evacuation was mules. And I found out that the local guide, sometimes we use local guides as well, who were looking after the mules, he'd sent them ahead without consultation, without speaking to me. He'd sent them ahead over the pass to the lunch stop. So I had no mules left.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stop the lead group, make sure that they were warm and safe, run down the mountain to find each of the two individuals and make sure that they were getting medical assistance with oxygen, organize the evacuation by bringing the mules back. And so that was a lot of information at one time, assessing who needed the most of my attention or any attention at that time, who took the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Then when the incident was finished, I had to debrief the local guide. And in fact, I ended up sacking him because his actions of sending the mules ahead was completely unacceptable. And we employed new local guides to assist us on the trip. So yeah, it's a lot of information. But again, I hark back onto the training as a police officer. You have a lot of incidents like that where there's lots of balls in the air and you have to make decisions on which ones to catch. It's as simple as that. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And how, like, it is just out of curiosity, like, How did you find that career shift actually? So, what made you to decide that, I don't want to no longer serve for police and I would like to be a mountain guide?
Okay. Not wishing to criticize anyone, but I was in the period of when the government was making a lot of changes, and that happens, of course, financial cuts and decisions on how we police, and in that period when I joined in the 1970s, late 70s, and people join because, as a vocation, you want to help people. It's not just a job. You want to actually help people. And I felt that we were being prevented from helping the public. We were no longer serving them as we should do. We were tied up in paperwork and administration and bureaucracy and things like that. And I became very frustrated with it. And I was in charge of a police station. So you'd think I would have had the autonomy to police how I felt we ought to police, but that wasn't the case. And in that frustration, talking to one of my best friends, and I said, I've had enough, I'm going to leave. And he suggested, why don't I retrain as a guide? And it was like a light bulb coming on. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful idea. I'm always in the mountains in my own leisure time, so why don't I do it as a job? And I started the training to become a guide. Simple as that.
Wow, that's great actually, and great story to learn as well. Like from students to how they can manage to shift their career as well and do the great. Because sometimes it happens that taking the career shift after you work so long, it's quite a difficult task because you get used to what you're doing, and this is definitely an inspiring story from.
You're absolutely right there, because I think it's very difficult. People get very set in their ways, or they have apprehension or fear about changing. It takes people say it takes a lot of courage. I think it takes a determination to say, if I'm unhappy, I need to do something about it. Your happiness is your responsibility. It's not down to someone else. It's down to you to make yourself happy. And if the job is not pleasing you any longer, then have the determination and make a plan to actually change it and go forward with it.
Yeah, that's very true. That nobody is responsible for your happiness. You are the only person. So thank you so much for sharing. And we are moving towards the next segment, which is more about fun or the relaxation segment. Here, I'm going to give you 3 keywords associated with your profile or the career, and you have to just tell me immediately whatever comes to your mind. So it can be an abstract definition, it can be a replacement keyword, or after hearing all those 3 words, if you want to come up with something creative, we are welcome to hear that as well. So are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So the first keyword that we have is it is a togetherness. Actually, there are a couple of words together. So the first word is safety and security.
Well, safety and security. I would instantly think of police, police and reassurance would be the 2 words that spring to mind.
Okay. And second keyword that we have is people.
In fact, the first word that came into my mind there was love, which may sound a bit cliche.
Already mentioned actually.
I find people. There's so much potential in us as human beings. And life is difficult, but anyway, yes, love. I'd go with love.
And I totally get it. And then the third keyword is climate change.
Oh, crikey. Optimism, necessity to do something urgently.
Yeah, that's great actually. And thank you so much for being impromptu in this particular section. We are moving towards the one more segment, which is about exploring your career work or volunteering, or little more, exploring about you. So we already discussed 2 paths, you served for the police for 25 years and then you shifted it to the mountain guide, and you are a writer now, so you write also a lot. So tell us more about your book, Stonechild, and what is it about and what message you have given through this book.
Okay, thanks, Alicia, for the opportunity. So during COVID, of course, I couldn't work as a guide. I had to stop because there was no travel and no clients, and that's a fact of life. I've always written bits and pieces for magazines to do with policing or to do with guiding. But I'd had an idea from some time ago when working one time in London and looking at statues, London statues. I've always, like many people, I'm sure, I've always had this idea, what if the statue came alive? What if there was a connection with a statue and the dead person, that they could communicate their thoughts through the statue? So during the COVID, I sat down and wrote Stonechild and it's about the London statues that come to life. It starts with Sir Winston Churchill in the House of Commons, and he comes to life with a serious message about the conservation and the fact that we need, we're talking about conservation, but we're not really doing much about it. And we have to take radical action to stop the use of fossil fuels and find renewable energy, and that needs a complete reset of the world, rethinking of the way we live our lives. So it was an opportunity to write this exciting, fun novel. The hero of the book is a young 15-year-old Molly Hargreaves who runs around London looking for clues. There's some humor, there's some history. There are some cryptic clues in the book, and she has to solve what's behind the statues. Are they really trying to help us, or are they actually trying to take over? And ends up with a big battle in London and those sorts of things. So there's a message there about the environment, certainly, but it's also, I have a teenage son, and I know how difficult life can be through the teenage years. So it's to talk about teenage life, adolescence, but I touch on racism and the way we look at each other, and so, but that's all done in a very light-hearted way and part of the story. So I was thrilled to write it. It still pleases me now when I pick it up and read it. I'm very thrilled for it to be published, and it's selling well, and I'd love someone to pick it up and say that would make a fantastic film, particularly with today's CGI, statues coming to life, and all how that could be created would be excellent. So that would be my ultimate reward of writing it, if someone made a film.
But yeah, so this is really very great idea, the way you come up with the Stonechild, and I would definitely encourage audience to check this book, as well as Kevin mentioned that, it could be a film. So there is an opportunity for the directors or the producers, like, if they would like to make a documentary or the film out of it. So thank you so much for sharing your side about writing as well. And moving towards our next segment, it's more about tips or advice. And here you can support your answer with books or courses. So the question is, any tips or advice would you like to give to the students or the professionals who are looking to get into this particular career track, or explore different areas, whether it is a police or the mountain guide, or whether it is a writing, and looking that as their long-term career option?
Okay. All of those professions, I think, are very honourable professions. You're out there to look after people, or you're out there to communicate to people. So my advice would be to feel the passion. Whether as a police officer or a guide or as a writer, feel the passion that's there, and really embrace that passion to say, I'm going to give it 100%. I'm not going to do, I do that part-time, but if you want to choose a job, then choose the job that's really going to make you passionate about what you do. It changes life completely. And we hear about people going, I hate my job. Well, change it. Go and find something that really excites you. And certainly there's plenty to be going on with at the moment, with the climate crisis and environment things and the loss of biodiversity and people with the way mental health illnesses and poverty and children. There's so much in the world to get your teeth into, to really get a grip with, but see what really stimulates you, and really feel the passion for what you're going to do, and you'll have an amazing life, an amazing job.
Wow, that's great, and good advice to have. Very wise, actually. when it comes to areas of expertise, I think it is very, very important that you find that excitement or the stimulus, as you said, which encourages you to do more in that particular space. So thank you so much. And no doubt the way you are talking, you are leading your area of expertise. So our last segment of the episode is leadership. So you are truly leading your areas of interest. So what is your leadership style and any specific leader that you always follow or admire, and why?
Okay. Leadership style. I used to teach leadership skills when I was a police officer in the police, and there's many ways of doing that, and often there's a list of all the different leadership styles. And I believe that a good leader, he or she, will adapt the leadership style necessary for the circumstances, for the
Wow.
scene, for the scenario that they're in. You can have one particular leadership style, but you really need all of the leadership styles. You need to be able to say, if you're in a building and you're the leader in charge of the staff in that building and the building's on fire, for example, you need to adopt the leadership style that says, come with me urgently, sort of autocratic, that you follow me. You don't want a vote on it. You don't want to be democratic and say, who wants to vote that we leave by this door? There's no time. So the leadership style adjusts to the circumstances.
Mhm.
Do I
Wow.
follow anyone? Not specifically, but if I see an example of leadership, good leadership style, I'll often make a mental note of that and think maybe I'll use that in future and those sorts of things. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Yeah, okay. So, but I received this very interesting answer actually, and the way I see the value add to it, like in leadership styles that I'm learning, different leadership styles people admire from their, whoever they follow or they admire. So this is very interesting actually, because this is very true that leaders should be adaptive actually, along with the circumstances, and be the leader necessary at that point, or the suitable for that particular circumstance. So this is really very important thing, I guess, a quality associated with the leadership. And thank you so much for sharing. And also, it was great learning from your career experiences. So thank you so much for being guest to the Solid Saturday and sharing your valuable experiences as well as the career journey. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alicia. Absolutely delightful to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. So this is all about Kevin and the way he's managing to lead his areas of expertise. Before we close our today's episode, as we have somebody from the police who served for police for 25 years, today's quote, we are going to close it on a safety and security. So today's quote is from Nelson Mandela, and the quote says, safety and security don't just happen. They are the result of collective consciousness and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear. Wow, this is the amazing one. And on that quote, we are closing today's episode. See you guys in the next episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together. Stay safe. Bye for now.